Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to make a spring snare. In other words, spring pole snare it's called. And there's this tree here, and what I did is I just took the branches off of it, made it a nice little, it's springable. I can pull all the way to the ground. It has good snap. That's what I want. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a trigger system. And what I did is I took this little stick here, and I just kind of shaved it down. I whittled a little spot here to make a spot for the cordage to go. So all I'm going to do is make a little ridge for my cord to go around it, like that. And you don't want to cut too deep, get into the pith, and it will just kind of fall apart. So now I got this little snare trigger started. Okay, so I'm going to put that down on the ground. Hold on a second, I'm going to look for something. Oh, this will work. Perfect. That'll work right there. This is just a piece of old wood that fell off of a tree here, it looks like. This will work great. So then all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that in the ground. And the way you want to do this is you want this to point towards your snare. This is the trigger system. I'll take the back of my knife, turn it into, and you never put your knife in the ground like that. Sorry, I just did that. It was dumb. And you want this to come down, and you want it to have good snag. I left this little crook on here to actually hold my cordage in place. Now the thing is, a lot of people won't have cordage. This is really dry, so it'd be hard to find good natural cordage I could find off of the roots or something. I'd have to dig quite a bit, and there's a lot of overgrowth. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my shirt off, and I'm going to use part of my shirt for the cordage. So all I'm going to do is take this off like this, and all I want to do is use the bottom of my shirt, and I'll make enough cordage to make a little trap out of this. So then all I would do is I'd poke my knife through like that, make a nice hole, and just follow it through with my hand, cut it off, and all I want to do is just I'm making my own cordage out of this material. And it's hard to rip, so it's going to hold good. You get to your seam, you might have to cut a little bit, make sure you got a really sharp knife, that makes it safe. And I'm just going to pull it down and actually separate, make my own line of cordage here. And you can also use this for bandages or whatever you need to. You know, a lot of people don't like to destroy their gear or what they have, but you can't think of it as destroying. You got to think of utilization, and you do what you got to do to survive any situation, whether it's destroy what you're wearing. But see, I'm making it so it's still usable. I can still use my shirt. I didn't destroy it that bad. I can still put it on, and it'll still cover me. So I didn't hurt it at all. It's just a little shorter. Can't even tell. So now I got myself a little piece of cordage. Now the proper way to do this would be to actually, if you got a loose spot like that, it's a little smaller, just wrap it, tie it into a little knot here on the back side of where the dip is, and that'll get a little bit stronger to it. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this into a snare. I got a little bit extra here, so I can pull that out. And by a snare, you want it to slip. And what a guy should do is actually get this really wet. It makes it easier to slide. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make myself a little loop, and I'm just going to give you a demonstration of what I would do if I was in the wild. And if you didn't have water, you know, you could urinate on it and get it moist that way. There's a lot of things to do. So that's a really good way to do it. You know, it's a good tool. It's not good to drink, but it's a good tool to utilize. So I made a little snare here. So now, see, that's what you would call that is a slip knot. So when something steps in it, they pull it tight around them. And this would be good for ground squirrels, a rabbit, whatever you would find in this general area. So I just wanted to test that loop. I'll tighten that up over here. You want to tighten it above where it slips, so that way it still has good slippage. Okay, then what you want to do, so I'm just going to make a small snare, and then what you want to do is you want to make a little loop like that, so when they step up here, put a little, you know, you do it in a game trail. This isn't really good game trail, but this would work really good. Then you bring your spring pull down, you tie this around here like that. So all you do is you hold it like this, hold it with your thumb, wrap it a couple times, tie it back in on itself, and all I'm using is just a little piece of my shirt. So you can use anything for cordage if you know what you need to use. So now this is it. So this is my spring pull. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it go a little bit. Then I'm going to tie my other half of my trigger on here. And to get that to stay in the little notch I carved out, I don't know if you can see it, little notch that I carved out right here. I'll twist this and make it a little bit tighter, a little bit stronger. And then what you would do is wrap it a couple times, tuck it under, tie it nice and tight on there, rip off the excess. Alright, so now what I got, in essence, is, if you look at that, I got that part of the snare down. So that's kind of what I'm looking for. So what I'm doing here is I'm just testing the strength of this, looking for any loose spots, because I don't want to set it and go through all the work and then have it break right here. So I just want to check it, make sure that that's going to hold, and that's plenty of tightness. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is bring it back down to me, and I'm going to fix my loop, and I'm going to shorten this up a little bit, make it a little bit longer here so it touches the ground. So all I did there was I just wanted to test it first, because I don't want to break this. If I was to break it up here, I would have less snare. If it broke here, I could fix that a lot easier. So you just want to, I always double check everything I do, because I don't want to go through all the work of making something and then having it not, you know, work, or as I leave, you know, a couple hours later it fails on me. And the ideal thing to do when you're making a snare like this is to make 3 or 4 of them, set up some sort of other type of traps, funnel type traps for animals on their trail and whatever. So here's where we're going to tie that there. So now I got my trigger here. We know that's going to hold. Definitely going to hold. So now what I would do is I'd bring this down, set my trigger, and if you look here, all I did is I shoved this in the ground, and it's just a natural stick. I mean, this is utilizing stuff that doesn't, you know, that I don't have to ruin the forest on. Okay, so now this is a hair trigger, so you got to be careful when you're doing this that you don't put your eye out with it. Before you let go of anything, you make sure by wiggling a little bit that it's going to stay there. And see, that wouldn't have stayed there. And that's what I'm trying to talk to you about, is you got to be careful and watch yourself when you're doing this type of stuff. I mean, this is something you don't want to play around with. Alright, so now we got it nice and tight. We know this is going to hold. We've already tested the trigger assembly. We have a lot more tension on it now, though, so this is going to be a little bit trickier. So what I want to do is hammer that down a little bit more. And see, I'm going to be pulling that direction with it. Once it's set, it's set. Now everybody stand back, talking to the camera crew. I don't want them getting hit by this thing, and I'm even standing back. And then I will demonstrate what would happen if an animal stepped on this. So I have it sitting here. I'd kind of push it up like this, and if this was on a game trail, this is how I would do it. I would just set it like that. I'd put a little food out here or something on a game trail where they funnel through, and then when they step in here, this is what happens. They step in here and they walk this way with it, and as they're coming this way with it, boom, they're caught that fast. Really simple way to do it. You can utilize your natural surroundings to make anything you want if you know what to look for. And a lot of people look on them and go, I don't have any cordage. You know, yeah, granted I have a survival bracelet, you know, but they wouldn't know, if they didn't have one of these, they wouldn't know to cut the bottom of your shirt off. Or you could use a shoestring if you have shoestrings. But these aren't really long enough where I knew this would be long enough. This is just a piece of my shirt, works great, cotton is nice and strong. So that's how the snare, the spring pull snare works, and that's the trigger mechanism. It's a super simple, really, really old technique that a lot of Native Americans would use. Northern Cheyennes particularly would do this a lot in northeastern Montana. So that's basically it. And see, now that I have it set, I can reset it anytime I want, and I would go around and make a bunch of these, just like that. And you want one side up, and see how fast it is to reset? I would take my animal, process it, set it again, and walk away, go do my other traps. And there it is. That's the spring pull snare.